Hello and welcome to the channel. Tonight I'm taking you to one of the most forgotten parts of Hogwarts. A wing closed for longer than anyone remembers. A place where curiosity is stronger than caution, where dust gathers in silence, and where some portraits were never meant to simply be observed. Lean back, relax, and just listen.
Story 1. The Forgotten Portrait in the Abandoned Wing. Lydia Ashworth was in her 5th year at Hogwarts when she discovered the portrait. She was a Ravenclaw, naturally curious and perhaps too fond of exploring places that were officially off-limits. The abandoned East Wing had been closed for as long as anyone could remember, structurally unsound. The teacher said, though Lydia suspected there were other reasons. It was a Saturday afternoon in late October when she finally found a way past the ancient barrier charm. She'd been studying unlocking spells in the library for weeks, practicing on progressively more complex locks, building up to this moment. When her wand finally persuaded the sealed door to swing open with a groan of ancient hinges, Lydia felt a thrill of accomplishment mixed with nervous anticipation. The corridor beyond was thick with dust and shadows. The windows were so dirty that sunlight barely penetrated, creating a twilight gloom even in mid-afternoon. Lydia lit her wand Lumos and stepped forward, her footprints leaving marks in decades of accumulated dust. No one had been here in a very long time. The portraits along this corridor were different from the ones in the occupied parts of the castle. These were older, painted in a style from centuries past, and they didn't move. At least, they didn't appear to move. But as Lydia walked deeper into the abandoned wing, she had the uncomfortable sensation of being watched, of eyes following her progress, even though the painted faces remained still. She explored several rooms-old classrooms with desks still arranged in rows, covered in white sheets like ghosts. A bathroom with fixtures that predated modern plumbing. A storage room filled with broken furniture and damaged artifacts that probably should have been destroyed rather than simply abandoned. At the far end of the corridor, in what must have once been a small sitting room or study, Lydia found the portrait. It was larger than most, perhaps 7 feet tall and 5 feet wide, housed in an ornate golden frame that was tarnished black with age. The portrait showed a wizard middle-aged, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to hold depths of knowledge and something else, something darker. Unlike the other portraits in this wing, this one was alive. As Lydia approached, the wizard's eyes moved, tracking her. A smile formed on his painted lips. Not a pleasant smile, but the smile of someone who had been waiting a very long time for something and had just received it. "Well, well," the portrait said, his voice smooth and cultured with an accent from centuries past. "A visitor, how absolutely delightful. It's been so long since anyone came to see me. Please do come closer. Don't be shy." Lydia knew she should leave. Every instinct told her to back away, to return to the occupied parts of the castle, to forget she'd ever found this place. But curiosity, that Ravenclaw trait that was both gift and curse, kept her rooted to the spot. "Who are you?" she asked, keeping her wand pointed forward, ready to defend herself, even though she'd never heard of a portrait being dangerous. "My name is Aldous Grimwald," the portrait replied. "I was headmaster of this school, 500 years ago now." Time becomes rather fluid when one exists as paint and canvas. But I remember my tenure well. I remember everything well. Too well, perhaps. Lydia searched her memory of Hogwarts history. She'd never heard of Headmaster Grimwald. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Why is this wing abandoned?" Grimwald's smile widened. "Direct questions. I appreciate that. The wing is abandoned because of me, dear girl. Or rather, because of what I did while I was headmaster. Would you like to hear the story? I so rarely get to tell it anymore." Lydia knew she should say no. She knew she should leave immediately. But she found herself nodding, drawn in, despite her better judgment. "Excellent," Grimwald purred. "You see, in my time, we understood that magic required sacrifice, not just effort, not just study, but real sacrifice. The most powerful spells, the deepest magic, these demanded prices that modern wizards are too squeamish to pay. I was conducting research, you understand, important research into the nature of magical power itself." "What kind of research?" Lydia heard herself ask. "The kind that required volunteers," Grimwald said. "Or, when volunteers were not forthcoming, the kind that required subjects. Students, primarily, ones who wouldn't be missed. Muggleborns, with no family connections. Orphans, the occasional troublemaker. I would invite them to private lessons in this very wing, and we would explore the boundaries of magic together." Lydia felt her blood run cold. "You murdered students." "Murdered is such an ugly word," Grimwald said, his painted face showing no remorse. "I prefer to think of it as magical research with unfortunate but necessary casualties. And it wasn't murder in all cases. Some of them survived the experiments, though they were chained. The castle dealt with them appropriately, of course. Can't have damaged students wandering about, spreading rumors." "You're a monster," Lydia whispered. Perhaps Grimwald acknowledged, but a monster who advanced magical understanding significantly. "My research into blood magic, into the binding of souls to objects, into the transference of magical power from one being to another, all of this laid groundwork that future generations built upon. Whether they acknowledged my contributions or not." "How were you caught?" Lydia asked. Grimwald's expression darkened. "I wasn't caught. Not exactly. I made an error, rare occurrence for me, I assure you. One of my subjects had more magical resistance than I'd anticipated. During an experiment, there was an explosion of magical energy. It destroyed much of this wing and severely damaged my physical body. My colleagues found me dying, found the evidence of my research, found the remnants of previous subjects. They executed you," Lydia said with satisfaction. "They did," Grimwald confirmed, "but not before I took precautions. You see, I'd been experimenting with ways to preserve consciousness beyond death. This portrait was one such experiment. They thought hanging me in this wing, sealing it away, would be sufficient punishment. Eternal imprisonment in the scene of my crimes, forced to contemplate my actions for all eternity. But they underestimated me. What do you mean? Grimwald leaned forward in his frame, as close as the painted surface would allow. I've been waiting, you see, waiting for someone curious enough to find this place, young enough to be malleable, talented enough to be youthful, someone who might be persuaded to help me. Lydia stepped back, raising her wand. I'm not helping you with anything. Oh, but you already have, Grimwald said softly. You see, the portrait isn't just a painting. It's a prison, yes, but also a reservoir. Every person who looks at me, really looks at me, contributes a tiny fragment of their magical essence. It's been accumulating for 500 years, feeding me, strengthening me, but it's never been quite enough to break free, until you. Lydia felt something pulling at her, a sensation like water draining from her body. She tried to move, but her legs wouldn't respond. Her wand hand trembled, the tip of her wand drooping, despite her efforts to keep it raised. You're particularly powerful, aren't you? Grimwald said with pleasure. I can feel it, the strength of your magic, the depth of your potential. You'll do nicely. Just a little more, and I'll have enough power to transfer my consciousness beyond this frame, perhaps into you, perhaps into another vessel. Either way, my imprisonment ends today. Lydia fought against the draining sensation, tried to summon her magic for a defensive spell, but it was like trying to grasp water. Everything just slipped away. The room seemed to be growing darker, or perhaps her vision was fading. She could hear Grimwald laughing, a sound like old paper rustling. Don't fight it, dear girl. You should be honored. Your magic will help resurrect one of the greatest wizards in history. Your sacrifice will mean something, unlike those pathetic subjects of my research who died for nothing. But Lydia hadn't spent 5 years at Hogwarts without learning something about resilience. She thought of her friends, of her family, of all the ordinary moments of life she still wanted to experience. And in that thought, she found something Grimwald hadn't accounted for: not raw magical power, but will, pure, stubborn refusal to give up. She screamed, not words, but pure defiance, and channeled everything she had into one desperate spell, Incendio Maxima. The fire burst from her wand with all the force of her fear and fury, engulfing the portrait in flames. Grimwald's painted face contorted in rage and pain as the ancient canvas burned. He screamed, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the physical frame, a wail of frustrated malevolence. You stupid child, I was offering you immortality. I would have made you part of something greater. You've ruined everything. The frame blackened and cracked, the canvas curling in on itself. Grimwald's image fragmented, pieces of his face separating and turning to ash. But even as he burned, he managed one final curse. I'll find you again. Somehow, someday, I'll return. And when I do, you'll pay for this. I swear it, on magic itself. Then he was gone. Nothing left but ashes and a charred frame. Lydia collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath, feeling utterly drained. She didn't know how long she knelt there in the dusty, smoke-filled room, but eventually she found the strength to stand, to stumble back through the abandoned wing past the unmoving portraits that might or might not have been watching. She sealed the door behind her with every locking charm she knew. Then she went to the library, grabbed the first history of Hogwarts she could find, and searched for any mention of Aldous Grimwold. There was nothing, no record of him ever being headmaster, no mention of experiments or executions, no explanation for why the East Wing had been abandoned. It was as if he'd been erased from history completely, or as if he'd existed in some timeline that had been overwritten. Lydia never returned to that wing. She never spoke of what she'd found, uncertain whether anyone would believe her, uncertain whether speaking of Grimwold might somehow give him power again. But sometimes, late at night, she would wake from nightmares of sharp-featured faces in golden frames, of voices promising power in exchange for terrible prices. And she wondered if the school had gone to such lengths to erase Grimwold from history, to seal away his portrait, and abandon an entire wing rather than destroy it. What did that say about the nature of the magic binding him? Could such magic truly be destroyed, or had she merely delayed something inevitable? The East Wing remained sealed. The portraits remained still and silent. And somewhere in the depths of the castle, in places even headmasters didn't visit, other secrets waited patiently to be discovered by the curious, the brave, or the foolish. Lydia graduated Hogwarts 3 years later, top of her class, and went on to become an accomplished witch. But she never forgot Grimwold. And sometimes when she looked at portraits in magical households or ministry buildings, she would catch herself wondering whether the painted figures were truly as benign as they appeared, or whether some of them harbored darker purposes, darker hungers, waiting with the patience that only the painted dead can possess. This story asks whether the past can ever truly be erased. Some things, even when burned away, never fully disappear.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this dark tale, consider subscribing for more stories like it. Good night.